Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday. We're back with another fun-filled Kelp Cam Live. My name is Dalissa. I'm an ocean educator with Birch Aquarium. Above me is my good friend and colleague, Jose. Jose, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm also an ocean educator at the Birch Aquarium. Like Dalissa said, my name is Jose. I've been at the aquarium for a while, so if you've been in the last few years, you've probably seen me on the floor working with our students at camp, which is also starting up this week. For the last few months, I've been sharing a lot of my time with you guys over here on Kelp Cam Live. So thanks for having me back, Dalissa.
Awesome. And today is extra special, not only because we're going to be talking about animal behavior, but we're also celebrating Jose's birthday. Woo! Happy birthday, Jose!
Thanks, Dalissa.
In honor of your birthday, would you like to share your very favorite Birch Aquarium moment from this past year?
There's a lot to choose from, if I'm being really honest. So I am probably going to have to go with all of the different celebrations that we've had over the last year, and especially Whale Fest, which was in February this year, where we're celebrating our migrating gray whale population. So our celebrations are a really unique way for us at the aquarium to be able to talk really specifically about certain kinds of animals that live in and around San Diego, and how they pass through the habitat and the unique science that the scientists at Scripps Institution of Oceanography are doing as well. So I really, really love Whale Fest because I think everyone in San Diego tends to appreciate the gray whales that migrate through here on their way to Baja California or on their way back up to the Bering Strait. But I think the best part of Whale Fest is being able to connect with our guests in that different way using these super charismatic animals. So that's probably one of my favorite memories from the last year.
Awesome. We already have a happy birthday wish in our live comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yesenia.
Happy birthday, Jose. And thank you so much for sharing. The celebrations are definitely one of my favorite parts of working at Birch Aquarium as well, and especially Whale Fest. Whales are definitely some of my favorite. You can even see them from our patio at Birch Aquarium sometimes when it's migration season. And that's really, really special. All right, so let's dive into today's topic, which is animal behavior. So this field is called ethology, and it includes studying how animals interact with their physical environment and also how they interact with other living organisms around them. This is one of my favorite topics because while each species is unique, you can really see those patterns become evident when you study multiple species. Jose, would you like to talk about maybe how scientists actually study ethology?
Yeah. So it turns out that when you want to study how something behaves, the best way to do it is to watch how something behaves. So I have some notes that I took yesterday that we're going to get a chance to do in a little bit. This is called an ethogram, and it's a little chart of animal behavior where we're just going to look at whether the animals that we're observing are feeding, whether they're active, inactive, social. If we can't see them, that's important too. And one of my favorite sayings in science is that the difference between science and having fun is that you're writing science down. So we could just be sitting here at the Kelp Cam talking about fun facts, and don't get me wrong, we absolutely 100% will. But we're also going to be doing science at the same time by writing down our observations, which is an important step in science. So if you want to play along with us, we do have in the comments right now a link to these, to the blank version of the ethogram charts that we have. Sorry, Dalissa.
Bye, guys.
But you can feel free to download that, play along, and watch some of the other animals that we have going on in our kelp exhibit as well.
An ethogram is really, really fun to do. So thanks for going over that, Jose. I actually did one on my dog yesterday, and mine kind of looked like this. You can see it. My dog is a little dachshund, and he was pretty much inactive most of the time. But basically how an ethogram works is you sit there for a certain amount of time, and then you mark what they're doing at different time points. Do you want to go over the details, Jose, of how an ethogram might be conducted?
Yeah. So I think what we're going to use for our time point is 15 seconds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every 15 seconds, what we're going to do, well, ahead of time, first and foremost, we should probably figure out what animals we're watching, right?
Absolutely.
So we've got a lot of choices over here in our kelp tank. Yesterday, when I was making my observations, I was examining our black sea bass. So to mix it up, actually, I think what I want to do is compare whether what she's doing today is different from what she was doing yesterday.
Great idea. That sounds awesome. And why is it important to know this? Why is it important to understand how animals behave, especially in the ocean?
Well, animals, like you said earlier, are using their habitat and interacting with other animals in different ways. And so if we can understand that better, we can better understand how to protect these animals and, by extension, the habitats they call their homes. The Earth is kind of broadly all of our habitat as a whole. So even if we don't immediately share the same place that we're living in, we do very closely connect with these animals, even if they're living in the kelp forest.
Awesome. Awesome. Right now I can see our giant black sea bass. She's kind of swimming around. So why don't we dive right in? So I'm going to go ahead and take my sheet, and I'm going to go ahead and write our giant black sea bass on the top. Giant sea bass.
And
all right,
ladies and gentlemen, while you're watching, please feel more than welcome to ask any questions you might have about our animals, because 15 seconds is a little bit of time, and Dalissa and I can definitely talk about what we find exciting, but we want you guys to participate as well.
All right, so the different columns that we have here on our ethogram sheet is going to say feeding, active, inactive, social, not visible, and other.
Yeah.
And I have a timer here, and I'll go ahead and start it, and I'll let it run for 5 minutes. And every 15 seconds, I'll go ahead and say time. And then we can go ahead and mark which box best fits the behavior of our giant black sea bass.
Sounds like a plan.
You ready to get going?
I am absolutely ready, Dalissa.
All righty. 5, 4, 3, 2, go. I don't even see her right now.
Yeah. Our first data point might be not visible.
Yeah.
But while she's behind the kelp, there's a lot of other
not
stuff
visible.
happening.
Time.
Not visible. Cool. But we can see a lot of the other residents of the kelp forest kind of moving around right now too. We've got that leopard shark is cruising around quite a bit. We were talking about that animal last week, I think.
Time. Not visible.
Not visible.
She might be making her way around the kelp.
Yeah.
She's kind of a slow mover. The way that she feeds, she doesn't really need to be fast. So do you want to talk about how she might feed in the wild? Time.
Still not visible.
Not visible.
This is real science, folks. It's important to write down not visible as well, because that way we know that we weren't being able to.
I see her. Time. Let's mark that. I'm going to say active on mine.
Yeah, she's kind of cruising forward. So I know that one thing about her big size is that it helps prevent other animals from being able to eat her. She's still cruising along?
Still cruising. She's very slow. Do you want to talk about why she's so slow, Jose?
She's just a big animal. So she doesn't really need to be in a big rush to get from place to place, right? So I had a sentence there, and it left my head right when I opened my mouth.
It's really cool to watch our giant black sea bass eat because they're really the apex predators of the kelp forest. So they can eat really big animals, and they don't really need to be fast like a lot of our like really fast and smooth fish do. Time. Because the way that she eats, she'll open her mouth and create kind of a really big vacuum, and she'll powerfully suck in all the water and her prey, and that'll go ahead and go down into her digestive system.
I'm going to write moving behind kelp and half not visible.
Perfect.
For that.
Time. And this is a lot more active than I've seen her sometimes at the aquarium. Sometimes she just kind of likes to hang out at the top and kind of enjoy the movement of the water, which is real sweet. Time.
It's definitely summertime, so she is moving a little bit more now. We did have the summer solstice the other day, so
Time.
I'm sure all of you are feeling that summer heat starting to come back up.
We got a question in the comments about what a giant black sea bass eat. So Marcos is wondering what they eat. They can eat a lot of different things. So they can eat little crustaceans, which can include crabs, lobsters, shrimps, and they also eat squid. They can eat big bony fish, just like they are. So capelin, any little thing that they kind of see swimming around. They can eat really big things because they're so big.
Oh, wow, she's moving towards the bottom.
Let's see. Time. Yeah, she's real active. She's making her rounds this morning.
Mm-hmm. So with that warmer water, we're going to generally see a little bit more activity from the kelp forest. One of the reasons that the kelp forest does survive so well here in San Diego is that we have a nice colder current coming up from the northern parts of the ocean. So it starts off in places like Alaska and Seattle and heads all the way down the California coast. That cold water brings a lot of nutrients with it, which lets algae and things similar to plants like giant kelp grow a lot and make this really nice forest habitat for all these animals. She's already back at the top. Wow.
She's doing amazing. She's really cruising along. We're at almost 4 minutes and 30 seconds.
Oh, I have not been keeping this as...
That is okay. I know the timer's on my end, so we can always compare our notes too, which is also really great and definitely a way that researchers will utilize their ethograms. So we can compare our ethograms to see how we witness different behaviors and compare that. 45, I'd say she's still pretty active. We're coming up on 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm. And I've also been supplementing my ethogram with little notes about how she's moving as well, because if I fill in the blanks that say that she was active, I know she was moving, but I might not remember that she was moving vertically as well as side to side. So if I write down that she was moving near the top or the bottom of her exhibit, that helps me remember she was moving, but specifically this is how she was moving. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a really great observation and a way to do your ethogram too. Just because we all kind of need to be cognizant of how our animals are behaving at the aquarium. So that's something that we're all watching out for. We're all looking out to make sure that our animals are happy and healthy, and their behavior is a good indication of that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about our results?
Yeah.
It may have been kind of hard to pull along. Perfect. So what did you get?
So I got that when we started our observations, when we started our experiment, she was hiding behind the kelp. In my head, I had this hypothesis, this educated guess about what she was going to do. Normally, when I've seen her at the aquarium the last few months, she likes kind of resting near the top of her exhibit. So I thought that's what we were going to see. And at the beginning, I didn't really see her. And then I saw her moving a lot. And then that kind of filled the rest of my observations as well. There were some points where I didn't see her or where she started moving behind kelp. And so I made notes of that. But she was moving a lot in front of the kelp, behind the kelp, and also towards the top and towards the bottom of her exhibit area as well.
Yeah.
So it didn't match what I guessed, but that's okay because now I know that today she is moving around a lot.
So does that compare a little bit differently to what you recorded yesterday?
Yeah, so what I saw yesterday, and helpfully, I had a different color when I was doing this that I did not plan. So in this blue, it says that 11 of my 20 observations had her inactive or kind of staying in one spot close to the top of the exhibit. She was active quite a bit yesterday, though. That's 8 out of 20 observations. She was kind of cruising around more towards the top based on the notes I have here. She was also feeding very briefly yesterday. She opened her mouth a few times and showed off that really big mouth that she has. So that was something we were discussing earlier.
Yeah, that's a really special thing to see her do. And it's really cool that you got to notice that while you're doing your ethogram too. Awesome. And how might a researcher obviously we're at an aquarium and we're on a kelp cam, so we can see right into the kelp exhibit. But how might a researcher do this in the wild? Like, say they wanted to study the behavior of a giant black sea bass swimming out near Santa Catalina Island. How might they do so?
Well, there are a lot of different ways that researchers can get into habitats. If you're doing a behavioral study like this, if you want to make an ethogram, you want to be really careful and try not to directly interfere with the animal that you're making observations of. So what you can do if you want to go to Catalina and observe something like a giant black sea bass is you can definitely go scuba diving. Make sure that you are properly certified and properly trained to do so. But you also want to maintain a safe and respectful distance from the giant sea bass that you are observing. There's special kinds of paper you can bring underwater as well if you're a certified diver. They have these things called dive slates where you can bring down waterproof paper and a pencil. It's a little like an underwater clipboard that also has extra clips so your water doesn't float away, so that your paper, doesn't float away. And then you can do really the same kind of observations that we just made right here from shore looking into our kelp exhibit.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have a good amount of time so that we can do another ethogram with one of our other animals. But before that, why don't we answer just a couple of the questions that we have in our live comments?
Absolutely.
So, let's go to the question, why is kelp yellowish? I had the notion that it was green. Just wondering.
I think that might be a little bit a trick of the light. So there are a few different colors of kelp. Kelp is what we call an algae, so it's a really close relative of plants. It's a little different from land plants for a couple different reasons. But they all photosynthesize the same way. They make their own food using light. So thankfully, it's been really sunny in San Diego lately. It's exactly why everyone lives here. And kelp is actually what we call a brown algae. So it's got special things that help it take up red light and green light, special chloroplasts, scientists call them, and turn that into food. Plants on land are a little more closely related to green algae, and they tend to have green chloroplasts, which helps them take in green light. But because it's so bright in the exhibit, they might not always look brown. And I'm also colorblind, so I'm definitely not the best person to be answering this question. But
thank you. I think that was a great answer. Okay, we have another question from Laura Bird. Why were giant black sea bass so vulnerable before they were protected from fishing?
Oof, that is a really good question. So a lot of the time when fishermen will go out, what they want to do is they want to make sure they get a big fish, because that means there's going to be a lot of food, right? And as you can see, our giant black sea bass is a real big fish. She is 300 pounds. Whenever we're doing detailing work on the kelp exhibit, and they need to move her to a different space so they can work, they would have to use a specialized crane to be able to move her.
She's a big girl.
Yeah. So that's the same kind of thing that attracts sport fishermen to things like tuna, which are also really big fish. I was talking with some people the other day. Tuna tend to be roughly the same size as an adult human and significantly heavier than an adult human. So the fact that these are big fish make them really appealing. Unfortunately, because they play such an important role in the kelp forest habitat, it's not entirely sustainable to be able to fish them. Fish that get really big tend to take a long time to get really big and take a long time to grow up and reproduce. So while it would be cool to get a lot of, it'd be cool to be able to do something like that indefinitely, because it takes a long time and they play such an important role in the habitat. That's exactly why they became protected in the first place. So that was a great question, Laura.
Thank you so much. It really was. And thank you, Jose. Awesome way to respond. Our sea bass is just really great. She's giving us a really great show right now. We just got to see the bottom of her, which was really cool. All right, let's talk about another thing. So Chris Chang asked, how can monitoring animal behavior in this kelp tank help animals in the wild in similar settings?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we can keep in mind what kinds of behaviors they are exhibiting in an exhibit like this, like the kelp exhibit, and try to apply that to their wild counterparts. our animal care team, our aquarists, are really involved in something called animal enrichment as part of their husbandry program. And that is encouraging these animals to be able to use as many unique behaviors as they can. So Dalissa, I think at one point today, you wanted to talk a little bit about animal training, right?
Absolutely, let's do it. Animal training is a big thing that we do at Birch Aquarium. In particular, it's called enrichment. Do you want to talk about what enrichment really includes?
Yeah, so a lot of it is really asking politely for these animals to be able to show off the different behaviors that help them out in the wild. So it could be something as simple as using creative problem solving unique to that animal to help receive some kind of food reward, or it could be something, I said simple last time, but I guess that's a more complex behavior. Something more simple like, can you swim over to this spot in the exhibit as opposed to that spot in the exhibit, and giving them a target they can swim towards.
Exactly. And that really helps animals such as our sea bass and our turtle when they need to be removed from their exhibits to be checked by a veterinarian. So those are regular things that happen at Birch Aquarium. We make sure that our animals are in really good health. And being that they're target trained, it helps them be removed from their exhibit essentially stress-free. And so that's one of the reasons why we really focus on that.
Yep. It helps us hold ourselves to a higher standard of care that a lot of other zoos and aquariums also hold themselves to. So it's something that our aquarists have a lot of experience for, and it's also something that they're always trying to come up with new and creative ways to do. I'm sure some of you have animals at home that you have trained to some extent, and they're always coming up with new and creative ways for you to engage with them as well.
One of my favorite enrichment examples is our giant Pacific octopus. Definitely one of my favorite animals in the aquarium, if I had to choose. But her enrichment is amazing. She gets at least 20 minutes of socialization per day, and she's really impressive. And she meets these different like marks as she progresses. So her puzzles might get a little bit more confusing, a little bit more harder to work through over time. And it's really amazing to see her progress. Okay, so Jose, do you want to do one more ethogram with one, maybe a Garibaldi, or we can do a grouper?
I think a Garibaldi would be a really interesting choice.
A Garibaldi, awesome.
Now we just need to find a Garibaldi, right? It's a big exhibit.
It is, but the good thing is that the Garibaldis kind of stick out like a sore thumb. They're quite bright. Okay, so I'm going to write on my ethogram Garibaldi. And which Garibaldi would you like to choose?
Well, I see a few spots right there near the bottom of the exhibit. There's one swimming right past the front there.
Okay.
So it seems like we have no shortage of choices there. For those of you at home, the Garibaldi are those bright orange fish, kind of all throughout the exhibit, but it seems that we've got a lot of them towards the bottom and kind of near the front right now.
All right.
I think I'm going to pick the one on the right from my perspective.
Perfect. I think I'll choose that one too. The right on my screen. Forward right. And then I will get going on my stopwatch.
Cool.
Ready, set, start. All right.
So these fish are also pretty interesting animals. We could talk for days about everything that lives in this exhibit, honestly, which is why we've been able to do Kelp Cam so much for all of you at home. It's kind of moving around.
I'd say active.
Yeah. I'm going to back up here so that you're not all seeing my face.
And time. And time, we're at 45 seconds.
Cool.
Jose, do you want to talk about, time? We can talk about what kind of behaviors we might expect from a fish like a Garibaldi before doing an ethogram. Is there anything that you might be looking out for?
Yeah. So Garibaldi tend to be pretty protective animals. They know what space in the exhibit is theirs. And so they kind of seem to enjoy telling everyone else in the kelp forest, this is my space. Do not go near my stuff.
Time.
And so they'll do this to other Garibaldi as well, especially males. So males are the ones who build the nests, and they are really protective of their own places. And they are also trying to get the female Garibaldi to kind of swim by their nest and hang out with them as well. So they'll actually produce certain vocalizations, which unfortunately we can't hear on this feed. So that is to say, they will make noise. Garibaldi are sometimes said to grunt. And I know it might be weird to think of fish making noise, but if I were to drop a hydrophone or a specialized underwater microphone into the exhibit, it would sound a lot like a forest up on land. It'd sound like there's lots of birds chirping everywhere, and that's the sounds that the fish make. And then out of nowhere, you would hear this low grunt. And that's all of the Garibaldi trying to keep their nests safe towards the bottom of that exhibit space over there. So that big bright orange color serves as a warning to all the other fish. Hey, I'm serious, stay away. And then if the fish do come close, they're going to start grunting. And our aquarists have shared stories with me that the Garibaldi are also pretty protective of their space towards the aquarists as well. So the aquarists have heard the grunt, and the aquarists know the other end of what Garibaldi teeth are like as well.
Oh, they're really special animals. And where might we be able to find a Garibaldi out in the wild?
So they're the state marine fish of California. They're found all the way down the California coast, and they kind of extend a little bit north and south as well. So they are found all down that Pacific coast. I'm not entirely sure how far south and north, but here in California especially, they do have a lot of protections. And it's really easy to tell when you're looking at a Garibaldi as well.
Right. I've seen them a lot when I was, I usually go snorkeling just off the coast of La Jolla shores, and they're really easy to spot. So when you're snorkeling out there, you might see a few leopard sharks, some spiny lobsters, which are really cool. But the Garibaldis will stick out like a sore thumb. Time. We're coming up on 4 minutes. And it looks like our little guy has swam away.
Yep. So I'm pretty sure the Garibaldi we are watching is a male, because it was staying really close to that one spot near the front before swimming away just now. So that really plays into how protective they are, like we were saying. They really like protecting their nests. The female Garibaldi are still a little territorial and can still get aggressive, but they're not quite as focused on their nests as the males are.
Right. And so that's something that researchers will look into. So there are scientists that focus specifically on Garibaldi and that are able to tell us, like, hey, this is how the males are behaving and this is how the females are behaving. And this is important for X, Y, and Z reasons.
Yep.
We're coming up on 5 minutes. And time. All right. Anything you learned, Jose? Anything significant that stood out to you?
So I did have a lot of marking of active, a few not visible. But before really the end there, the male we were watching was kind of staying in that one spot, wasn't he?
Right, yeah.
So we had a lot of active marks when we were watching our black sea bass, and she was kind of going all around. She was near the top and near the bottom, kind of weaving between all of the kelp fronds that we have. But our Garibaldi, when we were watching him, really was just staying in the bottom right corner, kind of where I guess, I don't know for sure, but I would have to guess. If I would have to guess, I would say that's where his nest is.
Right.
He really wants to protect that spot because it's his spot, and it looks like he's back now too.
Yeah, there we go. Do you want to talk about, Jose? So beyond the behaviors that are here on our chart that we're marking off, is there anything that you in particular like to look out for when you're checking out the kelp tank?
I feel like a lot of these behaviors are pretty broad on our chart, but
Right.
it doesn't cover everything, right? Like,
So what are some of your favorite behaviors of the animals here?
I think, honestly, I like seeing it. I like seeing whenever different animals try to hide because they have different methods of being not visible. And they might be in plain sight to us, but they might be camouflaged to all of their neighbors. So some of you might have been watching our green moray eels weaved throughout the kelp fronds. Along the back wall, you can't really see it from our view right now, but there are also a lot more crevices that our moray eels like hiding in as well. So that's one of my favorite behaviors in this tank, is watching the moray eels hide, and I'm sure that it's effective. I'm sure that if I were a fish doing an ethogram, I would mark not visible, but as a human, I would say, that looks like an animal trying to camouflage, and I'm not sure it's working that well for me.
The moray eels are my absolute favorite animals in this exhibit. I think they're hilarious. Their faces are so cute. All right, before we go, we have a little bit of time to talk about how humans interact with animals. So in studying animal behavior, we also want to be intentional in understanding how humans play a role in that, because we are animals as well, and we've kind of experienced the same things in a lot of ways that animals have. So what are some kind of stimuli that humans do that might produce a response in some sea animals?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Is that for me or is that for the audience?
Either way, we can. Either way, yeah. Maybe we can take some guesses from the audience as well. If you'd like to comment, think about what some things that we can do that interact with fish or sea animals. Definitely let us know down below. But we also have some responses too that we can talk about.
Yeah. So for that first example, whenever you're observing an animal, you do want to be as unobstructive and as respectful as you can be. Because if you go too close, just like Dalissa said, your behavior, some of the signs that you're giving off, might influence how that animal behaves. If suddenly a spaceman landed in your front yard, making a lot of weird noises, making air bubbles out of its back, I'm not sure that I would behave the way that I would normally be behaving. I think I would try to hide and make those not visible behaviors, or something to that effect. So I think something like noise or a strange visual stimulus, a strange sight, might have a very profound impact on an animal like a black sea bass or like a Garibaldi.
Exactly. And noises are actually really powerful in eliciting responses from sea animals. So a lot of times they can actually be used, like loud noises will actually be used as like fish repellents. So a fish hears a loud noise and will automatically swim away. I mean, naturally, right? Something scares you, you're going to walk away. Same thing in sea animals. So that's something that we have to be really cognizant of as we're utilizing our boats, as our research vehicles, if we're doing any construction, anything like that, and or drilling.
And sound travels really well through air as well, through air, but it travels way faster through water as well. So if we're doing something in one spot, we might not hear it maybe a block away on up here where there's a lot of air, but underwater, if a really loud noise gets made, it might be heard for miles and kilometers further out as well.
All right, so let's talk about a question that we got in the comments from Laura Bird. It says, what differences and similarities do you see in the behavior of animals in an aquarium compared to in the wild? So, Jose, do you want to touch on that a little bit, or do you want me to touch on it?
If you want to start off, and I can build from that.
Absolutely. So a lot of the care that we do, or that we give to our animals here at Birch Aquarium, and a lot of like basically the development of their exhibit goes into replicating their natural environments. So we're going to be able to, as you can see with the kelp exhibit, we have all of those like vertical structures, we have rocks, and all of those things are really going to look pretty much exactly like what you see in the wild. And being that their environment is really, really similar, a lot of times their behaviors in an aquarium versus in the wild are very similar as well. So we see those same kind of territoriality behaviors. We see a lot of flashing behaviors too, which is an animal behavior that we see in fish. We see changing of colors, and these are all really great signs of their health and happiness here at an aquarium. So another example would be breeding. If we notice that our fish are starting to have babies, that's a really great example of how happy they are, because that means they've reached all their basic needs and they're ready to move on with what is natural to them. Do you want to add anything, Jose?
Yeah, I think that was really comprehensive, and it really goes back to what we really want to be looking for, is that the animals are behaving exactly how we expect them to in the wild. And thankfully here at the Birch Aquarium, we have several successful breeding and species survival programs. And our Aquarius team is really, really diligent in making sure that our animals are behaving how we would expect them to in a wild setting. So there are some differences, but really we see more similarities between wild behaviors and behaviors here at the Birch Aquarium at Scripps.
Right. And that is a lot of, that's where enrichment comes into play. So that's where a lot of times aquarium animals might become spoiled because, you know, they're given their food right in their faces. So, and they don't really have to work for it as much. So when we're talking about, like, say, our octopus, and we're going to put her food into a jar, she's going to have to think about how to work through that to get her food out. And that's going to be just like she would in the wild. So in the wild, she'd have to be thinking of conniving ways to capture her prey, then break through the shell of her prey. Yeah, and we just try to replicate that. So we're practicing her mind and her body for those natural behaviors.
Perfect. Yeah. So she is still trying to solve some kind of strange shell game to actually get her food. But instead of opening a mussel, it is open this new enrichment item that we've come up with. It's really the same behavior.
Right. And like I said in the beginning, while each animal is going to be really unique, they're going to have their own set of behaviors that researchers are specifically looking to understand. A lot of times we can see really common patterns across types of animals, and that goes for not only marine animals but also terrestrial as well. And that's why we use ethograms, and ethograms are used for all different kinds of animals in all different kinds of research across the board, not just marine biology. Yep.
Which is why when Dalissa and I were practicing yesterday, we were using the animals at our houses.
Right.
But Anshika also raises a good point. We can use cameras to limit human impact on fish behaviors, which is kind of what we have going on here with our Kelp Cam Live. But I'm sure that you could use this ethogram on other webcams available to observe those animal behaviors as well.
Exactly. All right. So we are just about out of time. It has been so much fun. Jose, again, I'd like to wish you a happy birthday, and thank you so much for doing this Kelp Cam Live with us. And I feel like we had some really great, awesome conversations, got some awesome information on animal behavior, which is super cool. I would strongly encourage you all to quickly print out this chart if you need to, or make your own, and go out and watch animals in your neighborhood, watch the animals that you have in your home, and you'd learn a lot. And it actually is really relaxing and a great time, great way to spend your time.
Cool. Well, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everybody.